However, as Kwami's visits became less frequent, Zainab found herself increasingly drawn into the social circles of the university. She began to spend more time with a group of male students who admired her not just for her beauty but for her intelligence and ambition. The attention was intoxicating, and soon, Zainab started to distance herself from her old routines, and from Kesai. Kesai, who had been Zainab's closest friend since they became roommates, noticed the change in her behavior. Zainab began to neglect her studies, choosing instead to attend social gatherings and parties with her new friends. Kesai watched with growing concern as Zainab's priorities seemed to shift. One afternoon, Kesai met Zainab after lectures, and on their way home, she decided it was time to confront her friend. "Zainab, please can we talk?" Kesai asked, her tone serious as she closed her textbook and turned to face Zainab. Zainab looked up with a sigh. "What is it, Kesai?" "I'm tired, and I just want to get to the hostel and relax." Kesai didn't back down. "I'm concerned about the company you're keeping, Zainab. These guys you're hanging out with, they're not interested in your well-being. They're just trying to use you, and you're letting them." Zainab was annoyed at Kesai's words, feeling defensive. "Kesai, you're overreacting. I'm just making friends and enjoying my time here. I'm a young girl, and we are in the university. Please, allow me to live a little. I'm not doing anything wrong. It's not a big deal." Kesai's eyes filled with frustration as she tried to make her friend see reason. "It is a big deal, Zainab. You're losing sight of why you're here. You've been neglecting your studies, and you're pushing away the people who actually care about you. Besides, aren't you already engaged to Kwami, or have you forgotten?" Zainab felt anger rising within her. She had always appreciated Kesai's support, but now it felt like an intrusion. "Kesai, you don't get to judge me. I'm living my life the way I want, and if you can't accept that, then maybe we shouldn't be roommates anymore. I don't blame you. Do you think you're better than me?" "Miss Decent, please excuse me." Kesai's heart sank at Zainab's harsh words, but she refused to back down. "Zainab, I'm only saying this because I care about you. You're making choices that could ruin everything you've worked for. I just hope you realize it before it's too late." But Zainab was too angry to listen. She had felt the growing pressure of being both the university's rising star and Kwami's devoted fiancé. The attention from her new friends provided an escape, a way to forget her responsibilities, even if just for a while. Hurt and frustrated, Zainab made a rash decision. The next morning, she went to the university administration and requested a room transfer. Within days, she moved out of the room she had shared with Kesai, seeking the freedom to live as she pleased without Kesai's disapproval. As Zainab settled into her new room, she found herself drifting further away from her old life. The attention from male students and lecturers continued to grow, and Zainab soon found herself caught in a web of temptation that she hadn't expected. One of her lecturers, Professor Ade, had taken a particular interest in her. He was an influential figure on campus, young, fashionable, charming, and respected by students and faculty alike. He was also from a popular family in the state. At first, Zainab appreciated his attention. He praised her work, offered her academic advice, and provided guidance that seemed invaluable. But as time went on, Professor Ade's interest in Zainab became more personal. He began inviting her to his office during and after school hours, showering her with compliments and small gifts. Zainab knew deep down that what was happening was wrong, but the professor's charm and influence were difficult to resist. "Zainab," Professor Ade said one evening as she sat across from him in his office, "you're a very talented student. I've noticed your potential from the start, and I think you and I could work well together, beyond just the classroom." Zainab felt a flutter of anxiety mixed with flattery. She knew what he was implying, but she couldn't bring herself to say no. "I appreciate your support, sir," she replied, her voice hesitant. I just want to make sure I'm doing well in my studies. Professor Ade smiled, his gaze lingering on her. Of course, Zainab. Your success is important to me. But remember, you deserve so much more than just academic success. You deserve to be taken care of. Also, stop with the sir. Call me Ade, okay? Zainab smiled and nodded shyly. As the days went by, Zainab found herself slipping further into her secret relationship with Professor Ade. He offered her favors, gifts, and even the promise of better grades. She visited him at his house over the weekend and they often went on outings together. It was a dangerous game, but Zainab felt trapped, unable to free herself from the relationship. All the while, Kwame remained unaware of the changes in Zainab's life. He continued to support her financially, sending her money and caring for her mother. He called her regularly, expressing his pride in her achievements and encouraging her to focus on her studies. Zainab continued her secret relationship with Professor Ade. She liked him and enjoyed spending time with him. The lecturer's influence over her deepened as he continued to lavish her with gifts and promises of academic favors. Zainab defended her actions, telling herself that she was doing what was necessary to succeed in her studies. But deep down, she knew that she was straying further and further from the person she once was. Meanwhile, Kesai, though hurt by their falling out, still cared deeply for Zainab. She had noticed the changes in her former friend and was worried about the path Zainab was taking. One day, after spotting Zainab leaving Professor Ade's office, Kesai decided to confront her. Kesai waited for Zainab outside her new hostel room. When Zainab arrived, she was surprised to see Kesai standing there, her expression a mixture of concern and determination. "Kesai, what are you doing here?" Zainab asked, trying to keep her tone casual, though her heart was pounding. Kesai didn't waste any time. "Zainab, we need to talk. I've seen you with Professor Ade, and I'm worried about you. This isn't you. You're making choices that could ruin everything you've worked for." Zainab's face hardened. She had expected this confrontation, but it didn't make it any easier to handle. "Kesai, you don't understand. I'm just trying to get ahead in my studies. Professor Ade is helping me. He tutors me." Kesai shook her head, her voice filled with urgency. "Zainab, this isn't help, this is manipulation. He's taking advantage of you, and you're letting him. You're better than this. What about Kwame, your fiancé?" Zainab's anger flared. She didn't want to hear the truth, especially not from Kesai. "You don't know anything, Kesai. You're just jealous because I've moved on, and I'm making new friends. Stay out of my life. We are not friends anymore, please mind your business." Kesai's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't back down. "Zainab, I'm not jealous. I'm scared for you. I care about you, and I don't want to see you throw away everything you've worked so hard for. Please, listen to me before it's too late." But Zainab refused to listen. She turned away from Kesai, her voice cold and angry. "I don't need your help, Kesai. Just leave me alone." Kesai watched as Zainab walked away, her heart heavy with sadness. She had tried to reach out, but Zainab was too caught up in her new life to listen. As much as it pained her, Kesai knew there was nothing more she could do. Zainab had made her choices, and now she would have to live with the consequences. As Zainab continued her relationship with Professor Ade, she became increasingly isolated. She avoided her old friends and distanced herself from those who had once been close to her. The weight of her deception grew heavier with each passing day, and the joy she had once found in her studies began to fade. Professor Ade, sensing Zainab's growing dependence on him, tightened his grip. He would often remind her of the favors he had done for her, telling her that she owed him. Zainab felt trapped, knowing that if she tried to end the relationship, he could easily ruin her academic career. She also didn't want to upset him or destroy their relationship. Zainab paced the small space of her hostel room, her thoughts racing as she clutched the pregnancy test in her trembling hands. The two bold lines stared back at her, confirming the news she had been dreading, and yet, a part of her had already known. She was pregnant. The realization left her breathless, a mixture of fear and excitement swirling inside her. For a moment, Zainab sank onto the edge of her bed, trying to process what this meant for her life. She was in her final year at university, with graduation just a few months away. This was supposed to be the time when everything came together: her education, her future career, and the life she had been building for herself. But now, everything had changed. Her mind drifted to Professor Ade. He was the father of her child, a man who had captured her heart with his charm, his intellect, and his promises of a bright future. The thought of having a child with him stirred something inside her, an excitement she hadn't expected. This was a chance to start a new chapter, a life with someone who was more befitting of her status, a man who was educated, successful, and well respected. But then there was Kwame. Zainab's heart tightened at the thought of him. Kwame had been everything to her: supportive, loving, and unwavering in his belief in her potential. He had invested so much in her, financially and emotionally, and had always been there for her, no matter what. But as she thought about the life she wanted, she knew that Kwame no longer fit into that picture. He was uneducated, and despite his success in business, he didn't have the social standing that Zainab now wanted. With a deep breath, Zainab made up her mind. She would tell Professor Ade about the pregnancy. She was sure he would be happy, and together, they could start a new life. The thought of getting married to Ade brought so much joy to her heart. The next day, Zainab arranged to meet Professor Ade in his office. She felt a flutter of nerves as she made her way across campus, but she prepared herself, reminding herself that this was the right decision. When she arrived, Ade greeted her with his usual warm smile and gave her a hug, but Zainab noticed a flicker of concern in his eyes as he saw her anxious expression. "Z baby, come in, what's wrong? You don't look happy, my love," Professor Ade said, gesturing for her to sit down. "You look troubled. Is everything alright?" Zainab sat down, clasping her hands together in her lap. "Ade, there's something important I need to tell you. I'm pregnant." The professor's smile faded, and for a moment, there was silence as he processed her words. Zainab held her breath, waiting for his reaction. Then, to her relief, his face broke into a wide smile. "Zainab, this is unexpected," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "But it's wonderful news. A child. This is a blessing, Zainab. I want to marry you. We'll raise this child together and have a beautiful life." Zainab felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was exactly what she had hoped for. "I was so nervous to tell you," she admitted. "But I'm happy too. I want us to be a family." Professor Ade, his eyes filled with happiness, said, "We will be, Zainab. I'll make all the arrangements. We'll have a life you can be proud of, I promise." As Zainab left his office, her heart was filled with joy, and for the first time since finding out she was pregnant, she felt truly at peace. The decision had been made, and now, she could focus on her future with Ade. But there was one more person she needed to tell. Her mother, Amina, had always been Zainab's confidant, the one person she could turn to in times of need. Zainab knew that her decision would shock her mother, but she hoped that she would understand and support her, just as she always had. When Zainab arrived home, her mother welcomed her with a warm embrace, as she always did. The familiar scent of spices and cooking filled the small house. "Zainab, my dear, it's so good to see you," Amina said, leading her daughter to the living room. "You look well, my dear. How are your studies going? You are really glowing." Zainab sat down, her heart pounding as she prepared to tell her mother the news. "Mama, there's something I need to talk to you about. It's important." Amina's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. "What is it, Zainab? You're scaring me. What's wrong?" Zainab took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Mama, I'm pregnant, and it's not Kwame's child. It's for my lecturer. His name is Ade. He is excited and wants me to marry him." Amina's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, she was speechless. She had always known that Zainab had been distant lately, but she had never imagined this. "Zainab, how could this happen? What about Kwame? He's done so much for you. How will we tell the family?" Zainab looked down, her resolve hardening. "Kwame isn't my type, Mama. You know he took advantage of me when I was just a naive young girl. I know what I want now, and it's not an uneducated businessman like him. He's an embarrassment. Mama, you like Ode, trust me. He is young, educated, handsome, and also from a rich family. He loves me and treats me like gold." Amina's heart ached at her daughter's words, but she could see the joy and determination in Zainab's eyes. She knew that once Zainab made up her mind, there was no changing it. "Zainab, this is a big decision. Are you sure this is what you want?" "Yes, Mama," Zainab replied firmly. "I'm sure. Ade is the kind of man I want to build a life with. I can't wait to be his wife, Mama." Amina sighed, her mind racing with thoughts of the consequences. "Zainab, what about Kwame? How are we going to tell him? He's been like family to us, and he's invested so much in your future. What if he refuses to end the engagement?" Zainab's expression turned cold. "He has no choice, Mama. I've made up my mind. I'm not going to marry him. I'll tell him the truth, and he'll have to accept it." Amina nodded slowly, though her heart was heavy with worry. She loved her daughter and wanted to support her. "All right, Zainab. I'll support you, but you need to be prepared for the fallout. This won't be easy." Zainab's resolve didn't waver. "I know, Mama. But I'm ready. Is it by force to marry someone, he will get over it. If it's about the money, or they can pay him back. It's not a big deal." The next few days were tense as Amina reluctantly informed the extended family about Zainab's decision. The news was met with shock, anger, and disappointment. The family had always seen Kwame as a good man, someone who had taken care of Zainab and her mother when they needed it most. The idea of breaking off the engagement was unthinkable to many of them. "This is outrageous," Aunt Fatima exclaimed when Amina broke the news. "After all Kwame has done for her, she's just going to throw him away like this." Uncle Ibrahim shook his head in disbelief. "Zainab is making a huge mistake. She's blinded by this man's status. What if he doesn't turn out to be who she thinks he is?" Amina felt torn between her loyalty to her daughter and the reality of the situation. "I know this is difficult, but Zainab has made her choice. As her mother, I have to support her. Besides, the young man loves her and is willing to marry her." The family was divided. Some felt that Zainab was being foolish and ungrateful, while others, though disappointed, understood that she had the right to make her own decisions. Despite the family's disapproval, Amina remained steadfast in her determination to support Zainab, even as she worried about the consequences. With a heavy heart, Amina knew that the time had come to speak with Kwame. She dreaded the conversation, knowing how much it would hurt him. But as Zainab's mother, she knew it was her responsibility to break the news. Amina made her way to Kwame's home, her mind racing with thoughts of what she would say. When she arrived, Kwame greeted her warmly, as he always did, but Amina could see the concern in his eyes. He had sensed that something was wrong. "Amina, is everything all right?" Kwame asked, his voice filled with concern. Amina took a deep breath, her heart heavy with the weight of what she was about to say. Kwame, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but Zainab, she's no longer interested in the engagement. Kwame's expression changed from concern to shock, his eyes widening in disbelief. What are you saying, Amina? How could this happen? We've been planning our life together. Why is she doing this? Amina's voice trembled as she spoke, her own emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Kwame, I wish I had the answers. Zainab has made up her mind, and there's nothing I can do to change it. She believes this man is more suited to her, more befitting. Kwame felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. His heart pounded in his chest, and he struggled to make sense of what Amina was saying. But why, Amina? I've done everything for her. I've loved her, supported her, and I thought we were building a life together. Why would she throw all of that away? Amina's eyes filled with tears. She had no easy answers for him, only the painful truth. Kwame, I know this is hard to hear, but Zainab feels that you're not the right match for her anymore. She wants to be with someone who she believes can offer her a different kind of life. Kwame's mind was spinning. The words didn't make sense, but deep down, a part of him feared that this day might come. Zainab had grown distant over the past few months, and now he was beginning to understand why. What do you mean, a different kind of life? Kwame asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Amina looked away, unable to meet his gaze. Kwame, she's seeing someone else. It's her lecturer at the university. She's decided to marry him instead. Kwame felt as though the world had stopped. His breath caught in his throat, and his chest tightened with a pain so intense that he thought he might collapse. Zainab was with someone else. The woman he had loved, cherished, and planned to spend his life with had been seeing another man. The betrayal cut deep, and Kwame struggled to find his voice. She's leaving me for him. After everything we've been through. Amina's tears spilled over, and she reached out to place a comforting hand on Kwame's arm. Kwame, I'm so sorry. I know how much you love her, and I know how much you've done for her. But Zainab has made her choice. She believes this man can give her the life she wants, and she's determined to move forward with him. Kwame pulled away, the pain in his heart too much to bear. I need to speak with Zainab, he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. I need to hear it from her. Amina hesitated, knowing that such a conversation would only bring more pain to both of them. But she also knew that Kwame deserved to hear the truth from Zainab herself. All right, Kwame. I'll arrange for you to speak with her. But please, prepare yourself. Zainab, she's not the same person she used to be. Kwame nodded numbly, barely hearing Amina's words. All he could think about was Zainab, his Zainab, and how she could have betrayed him so completely. The next day, Amina arranged for Zainab and Kwame to meet at a quiet cafe in town. Kwame arrived early, his heart heavy with dread. He didn't know what he would say, or how he would react when he saw her. But he knew he needed answers. When Zainab walked into the cafe, Kwame felt a mixture of emotions, love, hurt, anger, and confusion. She looked as beautiful as ever, but there was a coldness in her eyes that he had never seen before. Kwame, Zainab said, her voice devoid of the warmth it once held. Zainab, Kwame replied, struggling to keep his voice steady. Why? Why are you doing this? What happened to us? Zainab sighed, sitting down across from him. She seemed more irritated than remorseful, as if this conversation was nothing more than a formality. Kwame, I've moved on. I've met someone else, someone who is more befitting for me. I'm in love with him, and we're getting married. Kwame stared at her, unable to believe what he was hearing. You're in love with someone else? Zainab, we had plans. We were supposed to build a life together. How could you just throw that away? Zainab's expression hardened. Kwame, I was young and naive when we got engaged. You took advantage of that. I didn't know what I wanted back then, but now I do. I want a life with someone who can match me intellectually and socially. Professor Ade can give me that life. Kwame's heart shattered at her words. So, all of this, everything we've been through, it meant nothing to you. Zainab looked away, unable to meet his gaze. It's not that it meant nothing. But I've grown, Kwame. I've changed. I need something different now. Kwame felt tears welling up in his eyes, but he fought to keep them from falling. Zainab, please, don't do this. We can work through this. We can find a way to make it work. But Zainab shook her head, her decision unwavering. Kwame, I'm pregnant. Kwame felt as though the air had been knocked out of him. Pregnant? With his child? Zainab nodded, her voice cold and detached. Yes. We're going to have a family together, and we're getting married. I'm sorry, Kwame, but this is how it has to be. Kwame's world crumbled around him. The woman he loved was carrying another man's child, and she had chosen to build a life with him instead. The betrayal was more than he could bear. He stood up, his legs feeling weak beneath him. Zainab, I loved you. I gave you everything I had. I never imagined you could do something like this. Zainab remained seated, her expression indifferent. I'm sorry, Kwame. I know this is hard for you, but you'll move on. My new suitor will pay you back for all the expenses you've made. Let's just end this now. Kwame shook his head, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. I don't want your money, Zainab. I wanted a life with you, but I see now that was never going to happen. Just be happy, if that's what you can call it. With that, Kwame turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Zainab behind. His heart was shattered, and he knew that nothing would ever be the same. The woman he had loved had betrayed him in the worst possible way, and now, he had to find a way to pick up the pieces of his broken life. As Kwame sat in his living room, he was heartbroken. He had lost everything he had dreamed of, and the pain was almost unbearable. Meanwhile, as Zainab watched him leave, she was happy that she had finally ended this phase of her life. She had made her choice, and she believed it was the right one. She looked forward to her life with Ode. She believed she had found the happiness she was seeking. A few days later, Ode asked Zainab to move out of the hostel and into his apartment. He insisted that he wanted to take care of her, and wanted her to focus on her final exams. She moved into his apartment and continued with her studies, preparing for graduation, while Ode made plans for their future together. As the months passed, Zainab gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Professor Ade was overjoyed, and promised her that their wedding would take place very soon. But as Zainab looked down at her newborn son, she couldn't help but feel that something was missing. She had gained the life she thought she wanted, a husband who was educated, successful, and socially respected. But the price had been high. She had lost the love and trust of a man who had truly cared for her, and no amount of material success could fill the void that had been left behind. Kwame, on the other hand, struggled to move on. The pain of Zainab's betrayal stayed with him, a constant reminder of the fragility of trust and love. He threw himself into expanding his business. But deep down, the scars of his broken heart remained, a wound that would take a long time to heal. Zainab stood at the window of her small apartment, gazing out at the street below. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, but she felt none of its warmth. It had been a year since she married Ade, and their son was now a few months old. As she looked out at the world beyond her window, Zainab felt a growing restlessness inside her, a need to do something more with her life, to use the education she had worked so hard for. That evening, after putting their son to bed, Zainab decided to talk to Professor Ode about her desire to start working. She hoped he would understand her need to contribute, to have something that was hers outside of being a wife and mother. She found him in the living room, reading a book, and sat down beside him, trying to muster the courage to speak. "Ade," Zainab began, her voice soft but determined, "I've been thinking. I'd like to start looking for a job." Professor Ade looked up from his book, his brow furrowing in confusion. "A job? Why would you want to do that?" Zainab hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I feel like I need to do something more, to use my education. I want to contribute to our household, to help support our family." Professor Ade's expression darkened, and he set his book aside. "Contribute? Zainab, what do you mean by that?" "Look, your role is to stay home and take care of our son and me. That's contribution enough. Why would you want to leave our child to go out and work?" Zainab felt a pang of anxiety at his tone. This was not the reaction she had hoped for. "Ade, it's not that I don't want to take care of our family. But I feel like I'm losing a part of myself by not working. I want to do something meaningful with my life, to use the education I work so hard for." Professor Ade's eyes narrowed, and his voice grew colder. "So you think taking care of your family isn't meaningful? Is that what you're saying? Or is it that you want to flaunt yourself in front of other men? Is that it, Zainab? Do you think I'm stupid?" Zainab's heart sank, and she shook her head vehemently. "No, Ade, that's not it at all. I just want to feel fulfilled, to contribute and support our family in a different way. Please try to understand." But Ade wasn't listening. He stood up, towering over her, his expression hard. "I will not tolerate this, Zainab. You will stay home and take care of our child. That is your role, and I expect you to fulfill it. This discussion is over." Zainab felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she bit her lip, determined not to let them fall. How had she never seen this side of Ade before, this cold, controlling side that dismissed her feelings so easily? She had thought he would support her, that he would understand her desire to work. But now, it was clear that he had no intention of letting her do so.